agree with part of it. We talked about whether it's through James or going to a meeting and saying, can we get an update? Because there has been meetings with the legal counsel, and we need to talk about next steps. Because what we need to do is we need to start looking at a 5-year plan, and whether it's at East Road, whether it's expanding at Bolton, whether it's at completely, and we talked about the SAU reached out about a piece of property. The challenge is, this all started from both WAC and John Stark Generals going to the Board of Selectmen and complaining that there isn't enough fields.
Are
So,
we live?
We are live now.
Okay,
We are
do
live.
you want to
Okay.
call,
All right,
like,
so-
the informal?
it is 7:15. We are calling the Parks and Rec meeting to order. I will just say that we did not have a posted agenda. So we are going to have a meeting in which we're just going to discuss an agenda.
Yeah, it's basically just going to be a working
working
session to set things
Yeah.
going forward.
Yeah. But let's do the Pledge of Allegiance as a formality. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are you okay?
Oh my gosh.
Right on TV too, yeah.
Okay.
So much for being on the chair.
So my apologies for the slow timing of getting the live stream going here. That took a little longer than anticipated.
Do we know, so one of the things that we need to do, and we did talk about this, when we do meet, and tonight we won't be making any motions or voting, but when we do from this point going forward, we need to say who made the motion and who seconded it and call the roll, particularly now that we're having minutes done by somebody who's going to be looking at the video. I know even for me sometimes, I know everybody's voice, but had to re-listen, so I do think we want to make sure that
And-
we do that.
And we are having minutes tonight, even though it's.
Well, that's what
Yeah,
We will
believe-
make
yeah,
sure
I
this
mean,
is
it's-
the minutes.
okay.
Yeah.
So as far as minutes go, we are behind on approving minutes. I have sent out all the copies of the minutes except for the 20th. Because those, the new minute taker was supposed to take. She got some challenges with knowing who made the motions. At Friday night, when we were doing our hiring meeting, I agreed to go back and listen to the tape and try to identify for her who made what motions. So all the minutes are out up through the March 8th. So at our next meeting, I think we have 3, if not 4 sets of meetings that need approval. And so we should all try to make a commitment to look at them and get them approved. I'd like to see us approving minutes at each meeting and not letting them.
And before we talk any further, should we do a roll call?
Oh, we
Now?
can.
I guess we can.
So that the minutes for this meeting, so that it's easy
Sure.
for her?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So Denise Purington.
Matthew Beeler.
Shelby O'Donnell.
James Drury.
But the minutes are up to date on the website in a draft form except for March 20th.
Okay.
As far as minutes go, we'll have that going next. I think that one of the agenda items that we had for tonight that we will defer is the naming of chair, vice chair, and secretary. So
Yeah, I
we'll
think
put
we all
that-
agreed to postpone
postpone that
officer
vote.
elections until a proper meeting.
So I think the major issues trying to get together is that we had, when we did the field schedules with WAC and John Stark Generals, we had agreed upon a walkthrough this past weekend. Obviously, with all the snow, that couldn't be done. We have all received multiple emails asking about when the fields and the tennis courts will be available for use. Practices are starting. So the first question I would have is, can we reschedule a walkthrough either for Friday, Saturday, some point, and do we want to include the value of having WAC representation, and John Stark, is in the past, there's been some conflict when we have to say, we don't think the fields are ready, but they haven't seen what we're seeing, and we have to postpone their practice. So the thought of doing it together was just that we could all agree, this field's okay, but can you stay off this field for another week? And maybe even have the discussions with them about lining the fields, when is the best time to start doing that? Just rather than going back and forth on email.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's availability, and I do think we should try to do it as a commission if possible, to get as many of us there, so we can all kind of see it together.
I do believe we did decide that we would not walk fields unless it was necessary without WAC representation. I believe we decided on that, was it the last meeting or the last meeting before that? That we wanted to have representation from both us and WAC. I have no problem trying to be available to walk fields, especially Purington, it's right down the street. I don't know if we necessarily need a ton of reps from us to go unless
Well, I
you
think
feel
it's,
that's,
I just, personally, I'd like to, I'd like to know what the condition is starting the spring.
okay.
Even walking Bolton, it's looking at the playground. Who's gonna get the sunshades up? When are we gonna put them up? I mean, I think that's what part of the walkthrough, how did our utility buildings hold up?
I'll be right back. Dave is locked out of the
Oh.
front door.
Okay.
You know, those kinds of things, what do we need? So, if we, I don't think we have to have 100% of the people there, but if we could pick a date and as many people could be there.
I think that's fair, yeah, if people want to go just for
Yeah.
that, just to see it, I think that's fine, but.
So I didn't know, you know, if we had talked about the rain date being Sunday, but obviously Sunday was no better than Saturday. So here's our next weekend, or I know you said you were available Friday. Are there other folks that are available on Friday? Do we look to shoot to try to walk through on Friday? Do we try to do it on Saturday?
Okay. Well, let's see, let's wait for Dave and Shelley to come in.
Dan sent me a note that said that he was canceled, that's why I didn't show up. Hi, sorry.
No worries.
No worries.
Karen,
Huh? My charger. My phone's about to die.
We were a little bit hectic this evening, so.
So we are being recorded, Dave, and to help the person who's doing the minutes, we have all said our names,
Oh,
so if
okay.
you want to do that.
Dave Lundin, Vice Chair.
so now that you're here, you can run the meeting.
Ah, super. Do we have an agenda? Did he give us an agenda?
Sorry,
We jotted down an agenda based on our recall from last Friday when we said what we were gonna talk about.
Okay,
Some items we can't because, we can talk, but we can't vote,
yep,
because we don't have an official voting meeting.
okay.
But we were just talking about the walkthrough that we didn't do, and looking to see whether some or all of us wanted to attend a walkthrough.
Whether we want to try it, I'm not available this weekend. It would have to be either, we have to see when WAC could do it as well, with whether they could do it. I mean, the fields are drying. The only unfortunate thing is I think we've got rain the next two, we have rain the
2 to
next
4 days, yeah.
Yeah, we have rain. We look at the forecast. It starts tomorrow night, and then we have Thursday and Friday are
Yeah.
rain.
So we're gonna have wet
So I
fields
am
this weekend
guessing
anyway.
They're not gonna be able to, I'm guessing at least till the middle of next week.
Middle of next week, they have rain forecasted as well.
Yeah,
At this
next Thur-
point, at
Next
this,
Thursday,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm talking, yeah, it's cloudy. I mean, the weather app I have, it's cloudy and everything else like that. It all depends partially also on the wind.
yeah,
Because if the more wind we have, unfortunately, it actually helps. It helps to dry them faster. At this point, I know,
So one of Adam Anderson, in one of the emails that he sent, he was asking about the soccer field at Bolton versus the football field. One is higher than the other.
yes,
Again, I think, for me personally, having a chance to eyeball it, to say, hey, does the upper field, soccer field look better than the football field? Go up, how does the baseball field look? And granted, rain, even in the summer, 2 weeks of rain can change the quality of the field. But at least being able to get back to them and say, hey, the soccer field looked pretty good, or it didn't look good, or, and if they're available to come with us. I know Adam was asking to be able to line the Bolton Field soccer.
well, there's no way he's doing it Friday.
I assume they're lining it for lacrosse. Would be what I assume that they're lining it for. Because that's, I know they do play lacrosse on the soccer field, at least they have in the past. They've always played soccer on that field.
He indicated in the email, and I think I forwarded it to you guys, that they were gonna try to stay off the football field, but we're looking to at least try to use the soccer field. And if you remember, I think when he was here scheduling, he had secured New England College for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Now we're getting into the third week of April. I don't know how far into April he secured New England College. But I think it's hard to sit here and decide without, this might just my personal feeling, without going out and looking.
That would, yeah, it all just depends. I mean, I may be able to do it Sunday. I know I'm tied up on I have stuff on Saturday that I'm tied up on and cannot do. So if they want to try to do like 9 a.m. on Sunday, if that works for people, we can start at the, I would start at Bolton or, start at Purrington.
Purrington is actually, I walked it today.
Okay,
Purrington is pretty dry. I would say they need to stay off the ball, the inner ball field, but the grass is pretty dry.
how's the infield dirt?
Fine. Seriously, it
Well,
is.
no, because let me rephrase the
Sorry.
question. They have washout, so
Yes.
like they actually have concrete piece holders that
Pads for,
hold
yeah,
the baseball pads in place.
Yeah.
Are those still all covered? Does it all look good?
those are all covered.
Okay, because in the past, we've had massive washout, and there is actually, I'd have to check with Joe, the previous WAC director, to see if there is still infield dirt, because WAC usually does a pretty good job of putting it back in. So I would start at Purrington or start at Bolton at 9 a.m. and just say, hey, we're gonna start at 9 a.m. and we're gonna go from one end to the other and just go through them all. So we'd have to go to Purrington, we'd have to go to Einison, and then down to Bolton.
So are you saying you could tentatively start at 9 a.m. on Sunday?
So I just want to throw out, you guys know that Sundays mornings
Church, yes, I know.
go
Yes.
to church, so if you do on Sunday morning, you're leaving me out.
I will not be available on Sunday morning.
I understand that. I think we're just,
Available all day Saturday and Sunday afternoon, but not in the morning.
Or we can do it in the afternoon, it doesn't really matter, we could do it like 1
So-
p.m.
I am available Saturday until 12:30, and I am available Sunday.
Doesn't matter, I mean, just pick a time, do you wanna do like 1 p.m. or And that
Okay.
way you can go through them as well with us, Denise. And just say, hey, we'll start at 1 PM at Purington and work our way through Heinesson and then Bolton.
Okay.
I know that if they're trying to line it, yeah, they could try to, I mean, I just don't know how soft it is. That's really the whole question,
Yeah.
is how soft that is.
Yep.
And, as far as I know, East Road is out completely, we just can't use East Road until all the legal stuff gets done, so that, as far as I know, we cannot even use that.
So if we do Sunday, 1 o'clock you said, right?
Yep.
Do you want to reach out to WAC and John Stark? Do you have time to just let them know? Or did you
Well,
want me to?
it'd just be whack, it's not John Stark is just trying to use the tennis courts.
I think she means,
The generals.
generals.
The folks, I don't know, we had,
No, they're
For football?
the football is in the fall, so we don't have to worry about the
but we had
football.
extended,
So we have lacrosse, so it'd just be, we need the lacrosse folks, we need the softball folks, and we need, the baseball. So we'd have to get a hold of the three of them and just say, hey, look, let's go walk them and see if they can, when we think. The other problem is, you know, we got them, how much of the middle school, how many of those teams are middle school teams, so you're gonna lose the middle school, whether they're even playing next week because they have, their DC trip. And then they're in school vacation week, and I assume they may not be practicing, they may want to try to practice, but it all just depends. So if we'll do 1 PM on Sunday, and we'll,
I think that sounds good, and we can just go from there.
yeah, and just,
While we're talking about the fields, I wanted to bring up storm damage. Purington has a little bit of storm damage from trees. There's a couple of trees on fences. There's some trees in the parking lot at Purington. There's also some trees that line Purington and the road there that are down.
okay,
And then I also went down to Bolton. Bolton Road was blocked by a good-sized tree. I cleared that at least out of the way. It's pulled off to the side so that people can get down there and have access. I know football wanted to get down there, I guess. The rest of Bolton looks good as far as tree damage. And I have not seen Einstein and Chase Park. I did not take a look at either.
Chase Park's got some trees down, but, that's usually done the weekend before. They go in and they do a cleanup of the week, they usually do the cleanup the weekend before.
Okay.
Or at least that's tentatively what I believe Lisa had set up.
Okay.
Was, the weekend before. Usually it's a, kind of, everybody comes in and last year I took a 18-foot double axle hitch trailer fully loaded with brush to the dump.
So, I'm willing to handle and organize the cleanup at Purington.
Okay.
And, that tree that's down at, Bolton, get that cleaned up so it's totally out of the road. I'm willing to take care of that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay.
And can I just clarify for the walkthrough, which field we will be meeting at first at 1?
Purington.
Purington. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Dave, I'm sorry, did you say you're going to contact WAC? Okay. Thank you.
And then while we're on parks, as far as, it looks like the skate park the fence got repaired by the firmly rooted who plowed the middle school. So it looks like those are all good, all of that's been fixed, so
Okay.
It's good to go.
You're satisfied with the repairs?
I'll look at it again. I'll be there. I'll be at the middle school helping this weekend doing,
Okay.
because they're putting up a batting, they're putting up a batting cage this weekend.
Okay.
So the tennis courts.
Yep, so now we go to the,
So, I met with the John Stark
tennis.
folks.
Yep,
So it was, they've put together a tennis team. They have somewhere between 12 and 20 students.
Wow.
Who have an interest in tennis. They're looking to practice one day a week, being Fridays.
okay,
It was Fridays. I ran out of the house so quick for this, I left my notes, I didn't get home, but, Fridays. And they they don't know yet as far as games go, whether they'll have any actual games, or whether the games will occur in other school systems. This being new for them, they're not sure at this point. I did indicate to them that the nets are not up. They had wanted to start practicing last week, but then the storm was predicted. I have not walked on the court. I've looked at the court. There doesn't appear to be frost heaves.
okay,
I could get up there this week and get the nets up
okay,
if that's what we wanted to do to allow them to use it. What I indicated to them is that we could, again, if we back up, for those of you for you two who are new, probably 2 years ago, we voted that because the courts are public, we had voted that it's a first come, first serve kind of thing. However, I did mention to them that maybe we could put a posting on the fence or on our webpage that John Stark students would be using it for practice. It's 3 to 5 approximately 3 to 5 in the afternoon. If you look at the history of usage, it's a lot of usage at 8 o'clock in the morning. And typically after 5, when people get out of work. I'm not saying you don't see people there from 3 to 5, but particularly like the pickleball groups that use it tend to be after work or first thing in the morning. So she just reached out again this week to see if they would be able to use it by Friday. Of course, if it rains, they won't be. I went over all the rules with them, carry in, carry out, correct shoes. Mentioned that the nets are pretty fragile, needing to just be careful about what's going on. But I think she's just looking for an answer.
yeah,
I did talk to them about parking, maybe looking at carpooling. And if they were going to host a game or two there, that maybe they could reach out to us and let us know that. And again, being respectful of the parking, the library parking, those kinds of things. So, I think it's great that John Stark wants to use it. And I'd like to see us do whatever we could do to facilitate that for them.
Yeah.
They would get the code to the gate, it still would have to remain locked. I have the locks in my car. I haven't unlocked the other one just because we hadn't decided when we were gonna open it. But I could go up there possibly Thursday if it's not pouring rain and try to get the nets.
I have kind of two things that, I think someone else had mentioned not being comfortable with people having the combinations. Are the combinations, are those able to be reset?
Yeah, so what we did last year, we had a sign created, it's on the door. It says, please call this number. It goes over a couple of quick rules, and it says, please call this number. They call that number, we have a voicemail set up. You get a quick blurb on, your responsibility, and then you get the code to the gate. What that does is it records the phone number of who's calling in.
Okay.
What we tried to do last year is every 30 days, I would go down and change the combination, and I would change the voice message, so that it was changed approximately every 30 days. Sometimes it was 45, whatever. There's mixed feelings about it, particularly from the public, because they have to stop, and we don't publish, although I did say to John Stark, we could give them, first time they call, they're gonna know what it is, but we could
Right.
make it easier. I could give their coach the code for that first one after
Yeah.
that. So that's how we handle the code change for the tennis courts.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
And it's just a voicemail. When we have had vandalism, then we're able to go to the police and say, here's the calls that have been, it doesn't mean that they were the ones, but at least we have a sense of maybe who was using. And that was set up by recommendation of the Board of Selectmen
Okay.
until such a time that the town can get cameras in place.
Okay. Okay.
It's not ideal.
Yep.
But it's better.
It's a working,
Yeah. So I just need some guidance as to what to tell Missapiki, if everybody's okay with them using it.
I assume they're covered under John Stark Insurance, because they are an organized club. So I would assume that they are covered under John Stark Insurance or their own private insurance, that the town is not gonna cover them. So it's kinda like WAC, where they've gotta have a waiver liability. I would assume that would be the only one question I would have, is do they have insurance? I assume that this is covered under John Stark's insurance.
I assumed, I didn't ask it.
I should not assume things, but you know, it's one of those things that like, hey, the insurance,
Yeah.
in case damage happens, that,
Well, what I did ask, the reason I asked her to notify us if they were going to host any other towns here, that then we might have to have them fill out a usage form
Field
to
usage.
confirm with us that the other towns coming in are covered by insurance. So that was, we did talk about that from the basis of other towns coming in. I guess probably not rightfully so, but made an assumption that John Stark, for all their clubs and sports, are covered under their insurance, but I can confirm that with her.
if I may, I think informally, we can, let them know, like, yeah, we have no problem with them playing. I think, though, that this sounds like a change of policy on the tennis court usage, and that it should potentially be treated like we let other organizations request field usage. This would be tennis court usage. I think maybe part of this needs to be postponed until we can vote on a policy change on the tennis court usage. We're having a lot of decisions that are being made about who can use the court when and who has access. I think that sounds like a policy change. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a policy change to me, and that's something that should probably be voted
Well,
on
what
and
I-
not just discussed.
What I will tell you is the way I left it with their coach was that, here's what the policy says, that at this time of the year, the likelihood of anybody being there from 3 to 5 on a Friday afternoon is pretty slim, but we don't reserve the courts. So I did not make a policy change for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the reasons, and again, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
vote on.
I'm saying going
Yeah.
forward, that's.
We can
fine.
vote on a
Yeah.
policy change. One of the challenges that we talked about, when you look at the tennis players that use it and the pickleball players that use it, you might come in and say, we want it Monday through Friday, 8 to 11. But then nobody shows up on Tuesday, but it's booked. And so I think as a commission, when we talked about that, we were trying to have some flexibility there, because when we look at fields for, like with WAC using it, they schedule it for games and practice that, for the most part, happen consistently.
Right.
You could get some tennis folks who could come in and reserve it every Tuesday, but then not show up. And how do you manage a schedule? Because we don't have a full-time director.
Well, I would say it would, I'm sorry, I cut you off, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the other challenge was who manages the schedule. So when somebody calls up and says, hey, I have this book and there's somebody playing on there right now, we don't, so I'm just giving you the history behind the
Yeah.
decision we made, was that we.
First come, first serve.
First serve, and to be honest with you, it's been 3 years, and
We
we've
haven't
had
had-
zero
Okay.
complaints.
Zero problems, and,
Yep.
and pickleball has been awesome. Through the pickleball club, they have, basically said that, you know, hey, if they've got all 4 courts going and tennis players come and they wanna play, they've yielded 2 of the.
Okay.
Because you could put a pickleball court, just so you, in case you don't know, it basically, you can run it on a half of a tennis
Yeah.
court.
Yeah.
So they yield the entire court, so they yield 2 court, you know, they basically give back a whole court, which gives them, so they're
2
down to
courts to
2
play.
instead of
Yeah.
being on 4.
Yep.
And,
And very often, you will see tennis on one side and pickleball on the other. So sometimes I look at things, if it's not broke, you know, kind of thing. And it might be to our advantage to just say, let's say to John Stark, you're free to go up there on Fridays and use it from 3 to 5, and if you run into usage issues, then bring it back to us, and then we might have to vote to
Okay.
change the policy, but
I mean, we could literally,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I guess figuratively, put the ball in their court and let the 3 of them figure it out.
yeah.
That's all. I mean, I guess just John Stark's probably gonna wanna say, hey, if we're going up Friday afternoon after school, they're probably gonna wanna be like, we wanna make sure
She was,
we're doing practice.
I think
But-
they were a little bit flexible because this is new for them.
Okay.
And even there, you know, then, you know, they want to practice on Fridays. Will they have enough kids? Will they have a game? So I think part of it is, maybe we let this play out,
Sure.
and then we see, and we ask for their feedback.
Okay.
And I did say to her, if you run into any problems, please reach out to the commission.
Okay.
But I think the tennis courts have been a little bit different than the fields because it has been a first come, first served basis, although I'm very encouraged that John Stark, you know, would like to be using them.
Okay.
And just to dovetail on Dave's, what Dave just said, the pickleball club has put a lot of money into the courts, so they have been good stewards. They've paid for the lining of the courts, they have paid for all but one net. They do the brush cleanup around the park, around the facility. So, I mean, I think the tennis and the pickleball groups have kind of worked well together.
I didn't even know there was a pickleball club in our town, so that's
There's a Ware
good to
Pickleball
know.
Club, and if you go up to the tennis courts, full disclosure, I run the pickleball, I'm the
okay.
chair of the pickleball club, but
Oh,
anyways,
great.
we've purchased a utility chest that has brooms and squeegees in it. That number is given out to the public, so if they go up there, it's wet, they can squeegee. There's a second bin just for the pickleball club where the nets and balls are. If you join the club, you get the code, so you get free use of balls. The town doesn't have to pay. So if you look at other towns like Warner, for example, Warner buys the nets, they buy the balls. And right now in Ware, the pickleball club has only asked the commission to buy one net. They've supplied everything else. So
That's great.
it's been, I think they've helped to revitalize the
Yeah.
facility. But you will see 2 bins up there, and you will see benches that a member made and donated, so, I don't know, like Dave said,
Yeah.
it's been a good working relationship between tennis, pickleball, and the commission.
right?
Good.
Okay.
And I know we've got, speaking of benches, I know we have a bunch of benches sitting at Chase Park that are locked up in the bathrooms that are part of an Eagle Scout project that will be placed around. I think he had to wait because they were pressure treated, so he had to wait for them to kind of dry out.
Yeah.
So that they could be pressure treated. excuse me, pressure treated, you can't paint it right away, you gotta let it sit for a couple of months. Speaking of pressure treated wood, the Lost and Found, there's a Lost and Found project that is going on for, as far as a capstone project for Chase Park, and it's coming along and it'll be ready to be installed. It will not, the question that the student had was, what color do we want it? We can stain it the colors of the existing door that's above it. We can paint it the trim color, you can paint it the color of the green, the kind of the lime green, it's kind of, I don't want to call it a lime green, it's kind of a soft green color as far as the color of the shack itself. I'd almost go with either the white or the brown, so it stands out away from the green, otherwise it'll kind of blend in.
Those benches too, and again, it wasn't on the agenda for tonight, but since you brought it up, just
Well,
for you
what
guys-
color do we want to get advised back on a color?
I think white
The trim color?
makes, yeah, I think that makes sense. It stands out, like you said. That's reasonable to me.
Okay.
And just to dovetail on your benches,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we'll have time when we do the walkthrough to stop at the gazebo or do it another time, but the benches at the gazebo, we had talked about the ability to use some of these new ones if there's any left. The gazebo benches are pretty, getting to be pretty unsafe. If you look at them, they're splintered and they are,
Well, the problem is those are around the edge, and I believe these are double-sided benches.
yeah.
So those probably would not work for the gazebo. They may be able to work for sitting outside on the ground, on the regular ground, but I don't think they will work for,
When you say double-sided, meaning,
they're like benches on either side. I believe, I haven't seen them, but I believe that they are like a A-frame, and they have a bench on either side.
but I'm not talking about the bench inside the gazebo. I'm talking about the benches around the outer perimeter
Oh,
of the gazebo.
I
They
was
are
wondering.
cement, they are a combination of cement and wood. The wood is splintered, and we don't, but I'm just saying that we talked about going up and taking a look at them.
Okay.
The Eagle Scout made more benches than he thought he was going to, so we have extra benches.
Okay.
If we felt that, and again, we'll have to look at it, if the benches up there can be removed and these might fit nicely, it's an option. It's just something we have to take a look at because it just, like during the last summer's events, the benches aren't really in great shape. From a Parks and Rec perspective, we can do better. But
Now-
but I'm talking about the benches on the outer.
Okay. I
exterior
was wondering, because the gazebo had a lot of work just
Inside the
recently
gazebo
done,
is
so, yeah,
perfect,
okay.
Yes, it's the benches that have been there forever.
Forever, yeah.
I think we can set something up to check
and-
it out.
I have.
I would do it, we could do it at the end, because we don't want to waste wax
We don't
time.
need whack
Yeah, yeah.
time, yeah.
So we'd have to do it go through Purington, go to Innis and go to Bolton, and then we could swing back through
That makes sense.
to check that. I know at one point we have talked about, I think you've been around long enough, that we kind of have a running list of things that, hey, here's something that could be an Eagle Scout project, and they're like, okay, hey, we don't know, I have no idea. Well, here's
Go, yeah.
here's like 10 different things that, hey, could be a project. I mean, we've had picnic tables donated. We now have the benches donated. We know we had an Eagle Scout project that refurbished the dugouts at Bolton. So there are other things that are out there, that we can do, like, hey, fix up the gazebo, do some work around the gazebo. I know we spent a lot of money on that gazebo as a town, and I know a lot of private fund, or some of the funds that we have did that, but that's something, we can maybe start working on. We also got that whole brand-new ramp at the skate park.
Yeah.
Now-
But that other one over there really needs to go away, because it's getting almost to be unsafe. So maybe when we're out this weekend, we can look at that and decide, yeah, that's gotta come down, that's got unfortunately gonna have to come down, which unfortunately is not a lot.
Yeah.
Now-
And I'll send it to you guys, but I did a picture inventory, so I went to all of our facilities and I photographed everything, including things that were not in great shape, so that we had a baseline. When I started it, there wasn't a great baseline, so it's in a PowerPoint. I believe we presented it to the Board of Selectmen at one point, but it just allows us to start to say, okay, where can we start to tackle things? We know we have a broken slide at Bolton. It's not unsafe yet, but again, while we're out there, we should be looking at it to see if it's broken more over the winter. We had bubbles that we replaced, but the remaining bubbles we should be looking at to make sure they didn't crack over the winter. So like Dave said,
Yep.
we now do have an inventory.
Okay.
And that we can compare the wear and tear over time. It's also was a good educational tool to show the town how much we have responsibility for. Because we have a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I have another question about, the Eagle Scouts or the seniors who do projects. Do we ever bring them either in front of our commission or in front of the Board of Selectmen to, say thank you, or even give them a certificate to thank them, or anything like that? Have we done that in the past? And if
They-
not, I think that would be something that would be nice to do.
We do, I mean, they do also get to, I know the picnic tables, I know the thing over at the skate park, they actually can put a plaque on it that says, hey, this was so-and-so's Eagle project. Even if you go down and look at the dock at Chase Park, it was actually an Eagle Scout project, a long time ago, but it is out. It actually has to, once they're completely done, and we're like, yep, you signed off, they actually have to go to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
And the Board of Selectmen actually has to receive it as,
Oh, good.
as a gift, or quote unquote, I believe it's almost like an asset, correct?
I'm not sure, honestly.
So, yeah,
They have to receive it saying, hey, thank you for
Yes.
donating this.
Yeah.
But I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
even though it's a picnic table, which we know is going to disintegrate over time,
We
but
take responsibility for it, so that
Yes, okay.
feature that just got put over at the park, when he's done, it becomes our responsibility. I'll give you an example at Inison. WAC built the building there.
Yes.
That's
They got,
the
they,
new
they
concession
got
center.
the approval from the board.
Yeah.
But that asset, if you go back and look at minutes, that, once it was fully inspected and passed, they were to come back to the Board of Selectmen, and I believe there was supposed to be a public hearing, and then the town of Ware would accept it as a gift, and it becomes their asset. So right now, that building is still maintained by WAC. A year and a half ago, we had the building inspector go down. It didn't pass, so they have the list of items that need to be fixed. But if you go back to the history in the minutes, at some point, that building has to be, and WAC wants to get it off their books because they don't tend to have buildings on their assets. But they have to get it up to code before they can bring it back.
Yeah.
And then there has to be a vote for the town to accept that as an asset, because once we do, we're responsible for the repairs.
And so, yes, so to respond to, yes, the town does have to receive/accept the projects. I'm the Cub Master for Pack 24.
Okay.
And I'll be taking up Troop 24 here in a couple of years. So, yeah, the Eagle Scout projects have to be given to the town, and the town has to receive them for scouts to sign off on their
Okay.
Eagle Scout component. So, yeah, it
All
does
right.
have to be received.
Great.
And one of the discussions that we've had over the course of the last couple of years, as a commission, to be really careful about what we take on, what we receive as a gift. Because when it does become our asset with a limited budget,
Yes.
and that has gotten a little bit better because now we have a revolving account, but prior to that, we had very little dollars to repair. A perfect example is the Bolton Playground. Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it 15, it was a large sum of money to fix that, replace the broken piece of the slide.
Yeah, it was like, to fix the slide pieces, it was gonna be like almost like $9,000 to fix that slide.
And
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's almost to the point where it would've been cheaper just to pull it down and put another one up. I mean, the whole thing is aging. The whole thing that we wanna try to do now going forward would be, hey, we wanna put this on your thing. Okay, great. So the asset is worth 50 grand. We want another 5 grand at the time you give it to us, that we're gonna stick in an account that's going to be, sit there and use, that 5 grand will be used to earn interest, and when we need a new roof on it, we have the money to
Do that.
to repair
Yeah.
it. If it's something that they're gonna constantly use and basically wear down, then we've gotta come up with, hey, we want an annual whatever to help maintain that asset.
I like that. It's
That makes
part of a
sense.
solid
The
5-year, 10-year
Bolton
plan.
Field Playground is a good example. And if you go back and look at any of the minutes, we had somebody come out last year and take a look at it with us. It's a beautiful playground. It's large, probably larger than what playgrounds are made today. As a result of that, we need a lot of bark mulch.
Yes.
We don't have enough, but we haven't been able to afford to put more down. We have pieces of the playground sticking too far out of the ground. But that was an asset that we inherited without any maintenance money whatsoever. So again, at some point, last year, we talked about, particularly after this individual came out and looked at it, are there things in the future? Dave mentioned the slide when it goes to complete disrepair. How many slides do we need out there? The gentleman who looked at it said, if you took a portion of that and added some grass and a little kid's area to kick a soccer ball around, for example, you'd cut down your cost of bark mulch. You'd still have a fairly large playground with a lot of equipment, but you could start managing your costs a little bit. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna do, but we've gotten some advice on things that we can do to help manage the long-term cost of that playground, because the equipment is so expensive to repair. As a matter of fact, we did not buy the bubbles that go with it. We had them custom made, and it still was cheaper. We went away from bubbles to just plexiglass window.
Well, we went from the bubbles just to a straight down piece of, and we could get 4 for the price of one bubble.
One bubble, yeah.
So,
Yeah. So those are the
I
kinds
mean,
of
unfortunately,
things
they
that-
are round, they are circular, so we now have the tools that are locked up in the Bolton shed to be able to get those bubbles out, but still, some of them, someone's actually had to sit there with a drill and drill out the holes in
Yeah.
order to do it. So that's all with volunteers' time that's
Yep.
done that type of stuff. So I think that's just what, we've tried to be more
Yeah.
conscious of, and to also start to strategize a little bit about even some of our current assets. How do we start to look at them based on the shape that they're in? And
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep, no, I think that is definitely something that needs to be talked about in the near future.
And then the other thing we're doing is making sure that, WAC, if they pretty much have all of their own freestanding nets other than the one at Inison. The one at Inison is buried in it, basically is dug into the ground. So those goals cannot move, but all the ones at Bolton and out at Purington are movable nets that, if they're broken and in disrepair, they are to get rid of them. And they can store them on the fields, but they need to be, like they do at the middle school, they tuck the soccer nets off to the side, The field hockey nets are moved off to the Alf for the winter and in the spring, because obviously they have baseball on it.
Yeah.
They did a good job here
Yeah,
a
they
year
did
ago.
about a year ago, they went
They
through, but,
went in and really, I mean, stuff was, the grass was grown up, you couldn't mow the lawn. They cleaned out a ton of old broken nets, and particularly down at Bolton and
yeah, Bolton
Inison, they.
Bolton
they
was the
cleaned
one
a
that
lot
was
up.
was
Yeah.
the worst.
Yeah, they cleaned a lot up. They did a good job.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have the parks, we have that. Is there anything in our, did anybody check the mailbox?
No.
No.
So the other thing, Dave, and we can't vote on anything, but we haven't had a discussion. And that was about the gentleman who came here. We never had a chance to talk.
Right.
Even if we don't vote, we haven't even had a chance to express our thoughts and opinions on naming. And just, he did reach out again. I think I forwarded that email,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah,
wanted to come to the meeting. He's been in the hospital, so
right.
didn't,
Well, I think it's an awesome idea. I would think we've got to go find out, is there anything in the or any, in the donation of that property? Because I assume that has been donated to the town. Is there anything in the deed or anything like that that would restrict that as far as being able to name?
I did reach out to Naomi, the
Yeah.
town administrator, more in a broader sense.
Yeah,
And asked the question if the town had a policy, because it could be somebody wants to name the gazebo or the town hall or whatever that may be. So I did reach out after our last meeting, and she indicated that there was not necessarily, the town did not have a set policy per se, but really giving some thought to the long-term, ramifications. So what happens the next person who comes along and the next person, and do you, eventually run out of fields? We had talked in the past about even where naming fields, so you have the facility that's named, like Bolton is named, and with it comes some level of donation. Potentially fields themselves can be named, but is it an opportunity to, as other organizations and towns may do, is it an opportunity, to fundraise or to raise funds for maintenance? When all your fields get named, what do you do? And are there other opportunities instead of the whole field? A dugout, a bench,
I was kind of thinking the same thing. Did you want to
Yeah.
put a dugout? Did you want to put a bench? I mean.
The flagpole, do you want to do something around the flagpole? But my opinion, and we talked about this for a second outside, and I think you had some very good points. I think that this is not for us to decide. Yeah, I think this is for the town, the Board of Selectmen. I think this is not for us to decide. And I hate to pass the buck to another group, but I just don't think that that's within our realm of, we're talking
I would
about a
think
town
we-
asset, and
I
we're
do
talking
think-
about.
I think we kind of
long-term.
have, like, being long-term though, I mean, I would think that, here's what we would recommend, and then let the
Sure.
Board of Selectmen say,
Yeah, yeah,
hey,
yeah.
we could do this, we could do this, here's this, if you want to do it on a small scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a bench in the dugout that
Yep.
says, hey, this is so-and-so's, in
Yeah.
memory of so-and-so, great, you can put a plaque up. I mean,
And also to Dave's first point, we don't know what's in the deed.
Yeah.
Like, because you were asking more generally about a town policy. Do we know whether there's anything in the deed that, because
Restricts.
that was a family who
Right.
donated a very substantial piece of land.
I think
and-
even if we step back from that for a
Yeah,
moment, and I
yes.
agree 100%. But if we look even broader and
Yes.
say, whether it's at Purington, the gazebo, Inison, the tennis courts,
Right.
and I agree, I don't think we can make the decision, but I do think we should
Have a
either make a
recommendation.
recommendation, or we should at least put on the table what we believe to be any concerns or long-term issues that we have.
Agreed.
And so I think, and even whether it's a flagpole or you put a plaque on a scoreboard or dugout, what becomes the responsibility? We went through this with a bench recently, and I know this is gonna sound silly, but somebody donated a bench and a plaque. The plaque fell off, the plaque got lost, and we went back and forth for a very long time. This is a donated bench, who's responsible to get the plaque put back on and remade, and so I do think
We
we
ended
have
up having
to,
a private donor donate the money to replace the plaque. And I want to say that it was like $250 for the plaque, and I don't remember what it was because the problem we were also running into is how do you re-adhere it to granite? And that part of the problem was, how do you re-adhere this
Yeah.
onto?
I was gonna guess it was probably like $300
Yeah.
for that.
so I think it's important when we have an individual, number one, we have somebody who gives a lot. And I think that's part of how Purington Field got named and how
Yes.
Inniston Field got named. So I do think what this gentleman may have done, I think it's important to recognize, the contribution he made to the students in this community. So I don't want anybody who may be listening or reading the minutes to think any of us are minimizing that.
No.
But as a commission, we have assets that we have responsibility for.
Yeah.
If you name a dugout or a scoreboard and 10 years later, they have to be torn down and rebuilt,
Yeah, and so we need some policy really surrounding that,
So
right? For
I-
long-term.
Right, so I think, yes, ultimately, the Board of Selectmen may have to make the decision, but I think we have to provide some framework of saying, here's what long-term we're concerned about, or even, this is what we might recommend. And I always hate to have to develop a policy around anything, but this might be a good prompting to say we should have a guideline.
Yeah,
Policy
yeah.
for the future.
Part of what I had said in the discussion that we had while we were waiting was, that I certainly understand the loss of a loved one and the desire to want to do something lasting, and impactful that honors that loved one. And, I think that coaches in general are people who can really impact the trajectory of another person's life. And so there are probably a lot of coaches who have been in this town, who have impacted a great number of people. And so it's hard to say like yes for an entire field for one person who was very special, but then not have that available for the next person who was also very special to a group of people. So I think that is where it's, there aren't enough fields for as many
Deserving
coaches and
Right.
Deserving
and
individuals as we
volunteers
have.
and who have impacted positively the lives of others.
And I think to your point, Shelby, that in writing that guideline or policy, whatever we want to call it out, then we also include the need to verify that the facility itself doesn't have any restriction.
Right.
So even Purington or Inniston, which I'm guessing wasn't a donation, those were named after people who were instrumental in getting those parks developed. But to your point, part of what would be in our guideline or our policy would be that we always have to confirm that there are no restrictions based on the
Right.
donation or the gift. So I think it's a combination of things that broadly and then more narrowly that we are going to need to look at
I agree.
as we do that. So I know we can't vote on anything tonight, we have some members missing, but I think just to be able to get back to this gentleman and say, well, we recognize that you wanted to do this for opening day. This is bigger than
Yeah.
what we might have first thought, and we have to do the right thing for the town.
Yes.
And that is gonna take some discussion and some crafting of language, and then, to your point, going before the Board of Selectmen and just saying, this is what the commission is thinking, what are you thinking?
Well, the other thing is, you know, while this guy is great, and, you know, I believe he had one of my kids is, you know, I hate to say it, in 30 years, you know, none of the kids are gonna be around, none of the kids, unless they have their own kids going through the program, may remember who this person is. And, you know, is it like a football stadium where you buy the naming rights for X number of years, and at the end of that, it gets moved to a plaque, it gets moved somewhere else, and you give someone else the opportunity, it becomes a whole thing of, that's why, you know, I know that the library has a bench for the gentleman who passed away, who was the librarian there, and, you know, they didn't rename it, they just put a bench out to honor him, which I think may be kind of the way we kind of need to think of, hey, a bench or something,
the
or a
flag.
flag, or the flagpole. It's more of I hate to say it's a smaller,
It's condensed.
it's more condensed,
Yep.
it's more easy to, naming the whole thing, I have a feeling it's just gonna open
Yeah.
a huge
I
thing.
can't remember where I was, somewhere where some town or some ball field did a flagpole with a beautiful little, I don't wanna call it a garden, but great, you know, stones
Yeah.
and it was dedicated to, I think it might have been a student who passed, but it was a beautiful, beautiful memorial to that person, and was in a place where you walked by and you saw it. So, I mean, there may be some alternatives that we, as we get more into it, we could look at, options that we could give them.
Just one word, I guess, would be, you know, don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. So if there are any other towns that have similar policies, to do some research on that, to say, well, you know, Henniker does this, New Boston does that, you know, say we've, you know, the more research that can be done and a more solid plan going forward to present to the board, I think would be far more beneficial for them to be able to say, oh, okay, here's some.
Agreed.
I can reach out to your suggestion. I've reached out many times to the director of New Boston Parks and Rec, and he's offered up to help. He sent us policies and procedures before.
Awesome.
We're also part of Southern New Hampshire Parks and Rec. I jumped onto one of their quarterly calls on behalf of the commission. I reached out, that's where one of the copies I sent you for the bylaws came from them. There are 5 or 6 towns, maybe even more, that belong to that. So it was a way for me to just reach out and say, hey, do you have any policies, or, so they might also be able to share. And I know the woman in Hillsborough shared with us some of their policies and procedures before too, so, great.
Most everybody's more than happy to
Yes.
share.
Yeah.
It's just, you need to know, who do I ask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what question?
So I think that's fair. I mean, I can do some research as well. I think that's fair to respond to the gentleman. Just, yeah, like, this is a lot
So,
bigger.
We're still working on it,
Yeah.
and at this time, we can't give you a yes or a no. We've
Yep.
gotta be able to make sure that, you know, because once we start down this road, we've gotta make sure that we can continue to support it going forward.
I'll reach out to the contact I had in Hillsborough, New Boston, and Southern, and see what they have, and,
I would also check with Goffstown, because I know they've got a ton of fields as well, and I believe they're kind of named, kind of after the major donor that helped get it going, so like, they've got Allard Field, which I know was after the gentleman who helped it, and I know, so, and I don't think those individual fields, they have a whole bunch going on 114 headed down toward Manchester, maybe it'd be one of those things to just get out, walk around and see what they've got on any of their fields, to
Yep.
see if they've got anything going on, would be just kind of to see what they kind of do on any of their fields.
I think that's a good idea.
Whether it's individually named or how they do it. And Goffstown, I believe, also has a full-time parks person that we may be able to reach out to.
I might reach out to Concord and just see what a bigger city has for policies, because I'm sure they have policy for everything, and that could direct us.
And it may not necessarily be a park and rec policy, but something in the town.
Yeah,
or
something in the
city.
town, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we just tell the gentleman that we need to keep working on it, and,
At this time.
At
we
this
can't-
time, we just
At this
can't.
time, we cannot
Commit.
approve.
yeah, we can't do anything. Yeah. And then the rest of that discussion is just gonna have to be tabled for a further meeting, when we get some more research.
And I know we're working, we did the interviews on Friday night. The individuals will be contacted. They should have already been, or should be contacted by tomorrow at the latest. Then we need to do is get them all, we'll need to, whoever we're bringing back, we need to make sure we get their shirt sizes, which Lisa has, and then get them set up to do the cleanup the weekend. I think we're gonna do the cleanup the weekend before, I think was what Lisa was.
And then, don't they have to go in front of the Board of Selectmen?
Yes, yes, they do.
Well, the question for the Board of Selectmen is, do you want to just see the new hires? Not there's new hires and rehires, so obviously the rehires everybody saw last year. I assume in past, you guys have not had to see the rehires, you've only had to see the new people.
Great
Which
question.
is,
I don't know.
which is either you're seeing 3 or you're seeing 15 or 16. So you make the call. I'd go off a pass. You just came in and we did the 3 and everybody we just kind of went and did it and closed. Hey, here's the names, bing, 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 bing. And they're like, obviously with the board turning over, it's kind of hard, but they would go, oh yeah, I remember him. Yep. Okay, fine.
Right, they're basically 3 on the board that didn't do this at all last year, so.
Yeah.
I do
Great question.
remember, if, whichever way they decide to go,
Yeah.
3 or all, I do think we have to remember, we have to make sure in advance they have their applications, their names. I think 1 year, 2 years ago,
Yeah.
they didn't have the applications in time. I think the board was looking to make sure they had some advanced opportunity to read over the person's name and stuff. So, once you get the answer, we'll have to make sure that Lisa gets to you
Okay.
the applications, so you have some advanced opportunity to look at them.
Yeah, so anything that you want to bring before the board, it's.
Well,
send-
we can't hire them.
No, I
We can only
understand.
regulate the recommendation, and we can make the
Right.
recommendation, hey, here's the people we had last year. Yes, they're all still good.
Where I was going was anything that you want to bring as a committee to the Board of Selectmen, you can just simply say, hey, put us on the agenda, these are some of the things we want to talk about.
Okay.
And hopefully there'll be enough time beforehand, you provide the resumes or the applications anyway for these folks so the board can take a look at. Now, whether it's going to be everybody or just the new hires, I'm going to assume it's going to be the new hires, but I'll see if I can find that answer.
Okay.
You still have to approve everyone. Just saying, yeah, we're approving, bringing this person back is, from what I understand, you guys just kind of have to give at least, I believe, I'd have to check with Lisa. Lisa's the one that does all of that, so, but I believe that's how it's been in the past. You've got to just say, yep, okay, that's fine.
At least check the box on it, I guess.
Wait, this kid? No.
Other than that, I don't think we have anything else.
That was it.
So I do have a question that we had talked about, just asking you for some guidance, and it kind of dovetails off of what you just said. So, as a commission, we worked for the last, I don't know, 8 months to a year after WAC and John Stark General's football came to the Board of Selectmen and said, look, we don't have enough field usage. And on the direction of the Board of Selectmen, we did a walkthrough with the Board of Selectmen, 2 properties, we were told to focus on East Ware. So there's a lot, we all know that there's a lot of loose ends. And I think as a commission, we have to figure out where we're gonna head eventually and what's our plan. So the question to you is there going to be, and you may not have an answer to this, we had just said tonight we wanted to ask your opinion. Is there going to be an opportunity, because what we had been told, what I had been told when I was attending those meetings on behalf of the commission, was that there would be a sit-down between the Board of Selectmen, Conservation, Parks and Rec, and Legal to talk about where do we go from here.
So
And so we're just trying to get a sense, is that gonna happen? Do we need to come and ask for it?
So the answer to that question is no, you don't have to
Okay.
come and ask for it. The board is trying to figure that out, because we are kind of in a legal predicament, because there were 2 essentially opposing warrant articles, and they both passed. So we can't do both, and so we have to figure out what is that going to be, and it may end up going to be, I think we would like to do arbitration, but I don't know if we have that ability to do that. It may end up having to go before court to have it declared. So which way we go. So I don't, as of right now, I don't have an answer. We're still muddling through how to do that.
So I guess the ask is, as that process unfolds, that we be kept in the loop. I'm assuming Conservation, Parks and Rec, right now, nobody's getting any, there hasn't been any meetings.
Right.
No feedback going back. But when you get to that point, that this commission, and I assume along with Conservation, we're all kept in the loop, and if need be, just what's happening.
Yeah, right. Now, so the other problem we have is that the Conservation Commission put in a warrant article. The other article was by petition. So who would speak towards that? We can't have, the 25 or however many people signed it to come in for that. Now, I personally think that park should be part of that conversation.
And that's
So
just, I think that's what
that's-
we're trying to
Yep.
convey, is that all the work that we did, and there was a lot of work, was done at the direction of the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
And so whether eventually Parks and Rec has access to, we're the 12 acres that we have access to, because at the end of the day, the original vote back in 2013 gave 12 acres for Parks and Rec. We just haven't determined where that is. But to make sure we close the loop and know what direction we're taking, just to make sure, that's, I think, what we're wanting to ask you, is that the communication flows back to us. That we have an opportunity to hear what's happening and
Yeah.
know
Well,
what's going on.
Right. We've only had one, really, we've only had 3
Right.
board meetings
Right.
right now, so.
But I think at the end of the day, whether it's 12 acres of field land or 12 acres in the woods, the Parks and Rec Commission are gonna have to make a decision if we decide we're gonna go forward to try to develop a 3 to 5 year plan of being able to expand for field needs, based on what we have been told by WAC and John Stark.
And it's John Stark Junior's football,
Yeah.
just so
Not
we,
John Stark High
not
School.
John
Not
Stark,
the
the high
SAU.
school.
That's why I tried to
It's
say
John
football.
Stark Junior's football program, just so that we're clear on when she says John Stark, that it's actually the
Right.
generals, juniors
Because
football
Yeah, I
program.
mean, I think this is a good example, we talked about this, but the weather situation that we have right now, because most of our practice fields turn out to be our playing fields, and the football field's a good example. Last year, when a truck drove all through it and tore it all up, it had to get repaired, it had to have some time to rest.
Right.
It had to have some time for the grass to grow, yet we had no alternative to give them because we have no extra fields. So
Right,
I
that's
think-
always, that has always been, that's been historical for,
Right.
for the 20 years that I've been here.
So,
That
you
there's
know,
just, you can't let a field rest
Right.
while you're using other things.
So I think whether it is East Road or not East Road, we have to continue to talk about a 3 to 5 year plan. What does that look like? What does the cost potentially look like? And what does the, where does the funding come from? And, you know, we did a lot of work to research. There are there's state funds. We've gotten 2 grants in this town. We got one years ago to help pay for the tennis courts and one to help pay for Purington Field. That funding is still in place. I spent a lot of time researching. I presented it to this commission. I have it all typed up if you guys want to see
I
it.
would love that, yes.
It's a matching grant up to $1 million. There's a lot that we can do with that, but we have to have a plan and we have to have a strategy. And it's a 1-year application process and has to be certain things in place. So it is important that, in my opinion, we keep talking about the plan. We may not have the piece of land yet, but the plan, because if we know we need a facility with 5 fields or 4 fields or whatever that number may be, we should start developing, that's our job.
Yeah.
to do
I,
that.
I look forward to receiving like all of that information because I do think the more data-driven that we can be on, about those needs.
Yeah.
And present that data to the entire community.
Right.
That is certainly effective.
Yep, and I'll send that to you, and I will send you the document I put together on the state grant program. It's pretty extensive, but it's not too hard to overcome. It would be something that the town would have to make a decision whether they wanted to go that route or not. But $1 million grant matching fund, up to $1 million, is a pretty significant amount of money, but it would take a fair amount of work.
Well, I think the master plan that was put in place for Bolton years ago was in the $1 million,
Right.
or certainly a large chunk of it was.
Right, right. So anyways, I think the ask to you is just that we get kept in the loop. And we won't come and push the board on anything as long as we know that when you get to that point, you
Right.
as our ex officio would make sure that we're pulled into the
Yep,
loop.
absolutely. That's,
Well, I have a question. So if it's closed to us and we can't even send anybody down there just to go down there and play, is it closed to conservation as well? And whoever's using it as far as haying it or whatever the heck they're doing with it, is it closed to all parties until this is legally resolved?
Well, did the board say no to our request to use it for practice fields?
the full answer to that is I'm going to leave it as a no. Part of that is because of the way that natural fertilizer has been spread upon the field. I don't think it would be in
You
a,
don't want the kids marching in it?
don't think you want kids marching, and certainly you don't want them doing face plants in it.
No.
Okay. So it has been fertilized?
That is my understanding, to where that has been.
My understanding as well.
All right, well, I appreciate you at least taking it as a question, and
Yeah, no, and I've been looking at, you had some questions about ex officio on different committees and what marks it for the board is putting together some documentation on that, some policies that what we expect, and going forward. The short answer is, you know, if it's stated, if it's in the statutes to have one, they have one. So that's the short answer, but the board is working on some of that documentation, some of that policies and the procedures. We actually found one from years ago. It's like, oh, we actually had something on this, and so we're making sure that, you know, it's not just in a paper form, but it's actually available online, and that we're actually having it implemented.
I think
And is
sometimes,
that meaning also including by that, who has one, who doesn't have one? Does that also include voting rights and non-voting rights? Is like, are you guys just here to advise and consult with? Or does that also include your ability to vote on that commission or not vote on that, voting or not voting on that commission?
Right, right, it has that in there.
Okay, cool.
great.
That's very good.
I mean, I think.
I'm not
that
saying
will-
you can't, you know,
Yeah.
we just never had anybody ever vote, so.
Let's have it be official.
Just, if we're gonna say you can vote, great. If-
And I do personally think having an ex officio on this commission is valuable, because like this conversation we're having tonight.
I think it's beneficial as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's more than
Yeah,
beneficial. It's,
because we have the opportunity to get the guidance, to ask a question, and to have you take things back for us.
Right.
You guys have a busy schedule, and sometimes it's just easier for you to
Yeah.
ask the question and run it by them.
Right, but at the same time, I do want to stress and make sure that you're aware that as a town committee, you are more than welcome to say, hey, we want to be put on the
Right.
agenda for the full Board of Selectmen.
Right.
There's nothing that hinders you from doing that. And as part of the board, I would like to, you know, encourage you that if there's something
Yeah.
that needs to be done, then we bring it up to the full Board of Selectmen.
okay.
Well, I think last year, the board was very gracious to me, because I was designated the person to go when we were working on the East Road property. They were always very accommodating to get me on the agenda and answer our questions and give us some direction. So, I mean, I do think we felt very welcomed when we have gone, and they've been very helpful. Even when we presented our price change at Chase Park, they gave us a lot of good feedback. It was a good dialogue. So, I mean, I think we've had a positive experience in that in the past.
We may, I'll ask Lisa, we're not doing any price change, so I think, I don't know if you guys have to just say, yes, we're staying with the same pricing from last year. I will check with Lisa with the pricing and with the candidates.
The hours. I think
And
we
the-
decided,
We're
we
keeping,
voted.
we're keeping everything basically,
Same.
the pricing, the hours, and then we have the 3 people to present. I will check with Lisa to see if she has to bring you all of those and just, yes, we're gonna approve the same pricing, yes, we're keeping the same hours. I think that pricing worked really well last year, and I think tinkering with it, we should just leave it the way it was, and it seemed to work really well. I know there's always been a discussion of having debit cards down there, but I know that the town gets charged for those, so whether we end up saying, okay, yeah, if you wanna use a credit card, it's a $3 fee to use a credit card or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's 3.5% of the,
The fee goes to
What's the,
credit card user.
huh?
yeah, you're right.
That
What-
It's basically to use a credit card,
Yeah.
but, so, but I think there's also a minimum thing, so that would be a Naomi and Beth question to say, hey, look, okay, if we're gonna do it, it's,
I think most everything I've seen is typically they just tag a 3. So if you're paying $5, okay, it's going to cost you 8 if you want to use your credit card. So-
right.
Yeah.
Whether, hey, it's a minimum of this, and, it can, it's a minimum of 3, but it could be, if you're putting in 4 boats and things like that, then that
Well, if
starts
you're-
adding up, and it's gonna be more than the $3, it's gonna be 3.5%.
Right, I don't know if you guys go online to get a burn permit for your, for your thing, but it's like $5 to, it's free, but it's a $5 fee to do it online, so.
Yes.
I mean, just get a because that's what credit card company is charging.
Right.
Or, Square, or whoever you're,
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's the problem we also run into is, you'd actually almost have to put a terminal in down there. And what the cost of those are
Yeah.
is, we've always done
Right.
strictly cash.
Right, I don't, right.
I mean, I think they take occasionally they take a check, but I think everything's always been
So
cash.
I don't know if they have, do they have internet?
We pulled
We shut down the internet for the winter, and we'll get restarted in the,
Well, I think, we'll go back and look at the minutes, but I think we voted to pull it and not restore it if we're not gonna be doing any paying, because we are paying a fair amount of money for an internet that we weren't using at all. So when we went over budget, we had it shut off for the winter, but I think we decided, unless we're gonna start using a credit card machine, why do we have an internet there?
Yeah,
well, I think it's part of that,
Now that the phones are
well,
fixed.
if the phones get fixed, but it was also because if you have the internet, you can, the supervisors can have the Wi-Fi access to use it for their phones, because sometimes the cell service is lousy, and if they're out away from the gatehouse and don't have a phone, then they can hook in and use the Wi-Fi calling.
fair, yeah.
For safety purposes, that's why it's been there.
Well, is
And it's
there-
restricted as to who has it. It's only the adult supervisor and,
is there a hard line there?
yes.
Okay. That would make me say, why have Wi-Fi access just for that? Because there's a hard line. I mean,
So what happened last,
emergency services can be contacted through the hard line, even if there's
Well,
somebody at the beach.
if they're away from the gatehouse and they don't have the cordless phone, because the cordless phones only can go
Yeah,
so
no, I
far.
understand, but I'm just saying, there's a hard line. You can message past, to get emergency services that way.
so last year before opening, we've always had like a copper line in there.
Mm-hmm.
The phone company came in and.
they don't want
disturb-
those anymore.
They disturbed it. And so at opening, we had no phones, the phones weren't working correctly. So we had the Wi-Fi installed so they could do Wi-Fi calling from a safety perspective. It took about 2 months for the phones to get fixed and working, so you could count on them working. But we paid for Wi-Fi all summer, but as we were going over budget and things were getting expensive, at the end of the year, we voted to shut it off for the winter, and unless for a safety reason, or because we went to billing, we wouldn't have it turned back on, because it was a fairly good expense. Doesn't mean we can't turn it back
At
on,
least
but that
$50
was.
a month.
At
I'm
least,
just-
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just giving you the history behind
of
the
course,
decision
yeah.
of what we were doing. So we had a legitimate reason last year because we did not have a working
Yep.
phone system for 2 months and needed to have
So-
that for,
Yeah, no, the only reason I was asking
Yeah.
was specifically
Yeah.
about a credit card machine,
Yeah.
because that would,
Right.
with the bank fees and
right.
having to purchase that
Yeah.
and having the Wi-Fi,
Yep.
that would be that's where your
Yep.
convenience
Right,
fees would go.
Right.
Right, I mean, the only other thing I have is, they could go, are they to go back and protest the charge later on, and now you have people who basically got in for free
Yeah.
or for whatever, just because they didn't wanna pay the fee, so it's,
I mean-
that's why cash is, I hate to say it, cash
Cash
is
is
king.
king.
Cash is king, and,
I mean,
Why make it more expensive
So-
to do the,
if we were to talk about doing credit cards down there, debit cards, which I think isn't necessarily the worst idea in the world, I think the cheapest and most affordable way is for the town or us to buy a tablet and a Square, and that's it. We use the Square with Scouts. They are extremely reasonable with the fees, and we did a lot of our fundraising using that Square system. Now granted, we're using, it's plugged into someone's phone.
Right.
Because it's within our committee members, but a cheap tablet's $150, and a Square is $25.
Don't you need Wi-Fi for it to work?
Yes,
though?
we would
Yeah.
need Wi-Fi, that would be factored in, but we could
Yeah.
skip the credit card machine and going through some other business.
So one of the things we
There
have.
is a solution available.
So one of
that's
the things we have to be
affordable, I think.
careful about, and if Pam was here, she probably would have more knowledge than I do, but because we are a municipality, we have to be sure that we adhere to all of the towns, all of the securities. So one of the things we talked about is to what degree we have to align with the same system that they use in the town office, and that we're having the same auditing and security tools in place, because we would never want anybody's credit card compromised or
course.
all that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the challenges, is that because we're in a municipality, the town has to sort of say to us, this is our standard, this is what you have to use.
Right.
And they weren't ready, nor were we, to do it to that degree at this point. We thought we might be, but we just never got to that point. So I think, I agree with you 100%, there are a lot cheaper solutions. We actually bought cameras for the tennis courts as a commission, and we were going to control them off our cell phones, and we had to send them back. And in the same way, when we look at the billing things, we have to be very careful what we purchase.
Yeah.
And the town has said to us, any data that we're collecting and storing must be done within the realm of the municipalities.
Right.
So that's been
Absolutely.
one of the challenges, is what do they have for charging system?
Yep.
And can we cost effectively connect it at the lake and
Yeah.
use it? So that's been one of our challenges.
That makes
It
sense.
doesn't mean we can't do what you just
Yeah.
suggested.
Yeah,
We would just have to go
We have to look
through-
into the rest, the rest
yeah,
of it.
we
Yep,
would have to go through
absolutely.
the town.
Yep.
And if we deviated, get permission and make sure we have the right securities in place and
Absolutely.
Okay.
auditing and all those other things.
All right.
To Dave's point, if somebody challenged us on credit card,
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, and that's why, I can't, the idea of of a third-party charging is they can't come back to us. It's being handled through a business, and this is what they do. Okay, so, something to look to in the future, but,
So Dave,
Yep.
before
Okay.
we do
Anything else?
end tonight, because this wasn't a formal meeting where we could vote, and I don't know that we, so we can't vote because we didn't have an
We didn't
agenda.
have the
Yes,
agenda
okay,
published.
yeah.
So the question I'm just asking is, do we want to start doing a little more discussion and voting? So we have the elections to do, the officers, if we want to talk more about what we're going to present to the board for this gentleman and naming, do we need to have another meeting before May? This wasn't really a published, like Tatum still is looking to come to a meeting. Do we
Right.
put her off for another meeting, or is there a date? And I know Lisa said that she was available the week the kids are on spring break. Do we want to see if we can find, if this room is available, and have another April meeting? Otherwise, we're putting off discussions on some of these things and being able to formalize some of them until the second Tuesday in May.
Right, that's kind of why I was thinking that we might want to at least come together and talk
Yeah.
about it, because
Yeah.
the spring is getting on fast.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I know
So-
Mother Nature's throwing snow
So
at us.
I
but
I would like to suggest we try to look for another April meeting.
I would agree.
That's fine.
That's fine. I mean, I just have a little bit of issue with last week. It's just gonna be tough because
Is that the week of vacation?
my wife is out of town and she's got, my 3 babysitters are going with her, which means I have just the 2 small children and myself. And my son works at night.
I mean,
I'm sure they'd sit quietly.
we would all, I think, prefer to have everybody available to all the meetings. The biggest problem tonight was just not having an agenda. If we had an agenda posted,
We could have
we
voted.
could have had a
Right.
voting
Yeah.
meeting.
Correct.
Yes.
And especially with you coming in a little bit late and with the vice chairship, you can, right, like we have some organization.
Yep.
So I think the best date we can do with the most amount of people possible, as long as we can get the chair or the vice chair or an acknowledged temp for that
Yep.
meeting or whatever.
I think in the past, we've always held the meeting regardless of whether everybody could make it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always gonna be
Of
some,
course.
one or two, as long as we have an agenda posted and a quorum.
Yep.
We hold the meeting.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You wish everybody was here.
Yeah.
I do
Yes.
think if we're gonna talk about electing officers, to try to do that at a meeting where most of the people are here, out
I
of
think that
courtesy
should
of all the
be-
members.
Yeah, I think there should not be election unless everybody can be there.
So, but again, there are, so I just
I
throw it
don't,
out.
I don't, you'd have to look at this schedule for this room, because I don't have,
That would actually go to Naomi, I believe.
okay.
So,
handles the
because I
schedule.
don't work, I always say this, I mean, I'm happy to run down,
Okay.
as I usually do the day after the meeting, and go through everything with Naomi, but, I can come down tomorrow and find out the dates that the rooms are available, this room is available, and throw it out in an email.
Okay.
And then maybe we could come back with, when we have the majority, maybe get a majority. So I'm happy to do that, see if I can get the availability, because I think the desire is that everybody try to meet in this room, so it can be,
Yes.
plus if our minute taker's gonna do minutes, we're better off
Yes.
to be in this room.
Agreed.
All right, so I will ask Naomi,
And is she watching the video, or is she
Yes.
only doing audio?
I think she's watching,
I think she's watching, she's
think
going to
she's-
YouTube and,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And go-
think-
I just
'cause
wanna
think
make
you
sure,
said she
'cause
went back to
otherwise-
The video and tried to match.
The voice, I just try to make sure if she tried to match the voice, because if she's only doing it off of voice,
Yeah.
then we need to say, hey, this is Dave.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying, so we're stating a name beforehand.
So
If
it's a-
that's, if she's only doing audio, then we just.
I don't know if it's me, when I first started doing minutes and watching the video, the text was there, so I could listen, but I could read the text. I'm either doing something wrong, or the ability to have the text there is gone. So when you are listening, and you don't, like when we had the folks here from the ball fields, if I couldn't catch their name, I had to back up, and sometimes 3 or 4 times, because they weren't real clear, I had a Ryan instead of a Brian, for example. And when it used to be the text would help me, because then I could look at the text. So from a minute taker's perspective, if it's not collecting the text anymore, it is even more important that we're very clear with names and those types of things, because it's very hard to listen. It can take 2 to 3 hours.
I think what we need to do is on anybody who comes in, is just say, state your name and spell your name for the record, and that way, that makes it easy for them. They spell out their name, and
yeah, and that's where having, I'm sorry, that's where
Oh,
having
yeah.
the sign-in sheet
That's
for people
what
to
I was
come
going to
in
say.
to sign in, so they say,
Yeah.
who?
Because
For the
we
last 3
also,
months, Pam has been very good about that.
yeah,
And she's been handing it to me, but during the WAC meeting, I don't think we had them all sign in.
oh, okay.
And so there were just a few names that was a little challenging.
I mean,
Sure.
we also need to confirm that people actually live in town, right? I mean, because,
Well, that's why we, I don't
don't
know.
we?
don't-
Because otherwise,
There's 2 different
I
things.
mean-
You live in town, you're a taxpayer in town, or you
Okay.
don't live in town.
yeah,
Because people live in town, but they're not taxpayers in town. I'm sorry, they're not residents. They may pay taxes, but they're not,
well, it could be either way.
it can be.
So they could
okay.
be, they could pay taxes like Cold Spring RV, they pay taxes, so they are in the tax log for as far as if they wanted to come into Chase Park, but, their legal residence is wherever they
they
are.
could be
legally.
Airbnb
Yeah.
for a month at the lake.
Their business is here, but yeah.
Okay,
So I think there's a whole host
Okay.
of scenarios that you
Just,
might
we can
see.
just stay in where they live.
I
and-
mean, I would just play it off of what Board of Selectmen does at their meetings.
Yeah, we ask them to state their name and where they live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Their address, I think.
and I don't think I've ever run into somebody coming from Goffstown who wanted
Yeah.
to speak at one of our meetings.
Yeah.
I suppose technically they could, or if they did that, we'd have to say, why are you even here?
Yep.
I think you had that
We-
with the interim building inspector.
We do, right, so-
But he acknowledged that he was not in town and
And
why
when-
he was there.
And when they're, right, and when they're the expert, and he was still working as an agent of the town.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
okay,
so,
makes sense.
you know,
Slightly different scenario.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't know if there is still the text. I just haven't been able to, it used
whether,
to come
whether,
up-
whether you're turning on your closed captions or not.
Yeah, it used to come up on the side, and maybe that's what I'm not doing right, but the text all of a sudden went away. For about a year and a half, I had the text,
Okay.
and I haven't had it recently, and I've tried to hit the closed caption button, and it says something like, this is not a, I'll go back and try it again.
That may be a
but-
setting,
That may
in-
be,
that may
yeah.
be a setting on the streaming side to
Yep.
allow that.
I kind of
And-
got the impression that when they did some work, that they no longer have that happening.
Like on the town's end?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
I
think
think
it's on the
Probably-
town.
It's probably on the
yeah.
town
Yeah.
end that they need to enable that or
I
something.
think we need to make sure that happens then, because in terms of hearing impaired,
Yeah.
who live in town, I would like to make sure that they also have access.
It's a very good
And
point.
for our, I agree,
Yes.
and for our minute takers, it's
Yeah.
helpful to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
But even
primary,
more-
the
even
primary
more.
is, yeah, the hearing disabled. The secondary is for our minute taker, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I will come talk to Naomi tomorrow. I'll find out when this room is available. I'll shoot out an email, and then we can look to pick a date where we could get a quorum.
I had one quick question, and I'm gonna direct it to you if you know. We've been chatted all day on this email string, right? Is that the legal way, or the right way, I should say, to have the kind of discussions that we had to deal with today or any other ones? Is an email chain,
So, you know, I do not, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on TV. You know, your mileage may vary
Sure.
with this. My understanding is, you know, email is okay. And I don't think there was anything particular about what we had, the conversations that we had. But having it in a public forum like this, where it's easy to access, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have it over here, so that we, if we're having these conversations, that it is recorded. Anything that's done in email, whether it is the town address or your personal ones, can be subject to a right-to-know request.
Sure.
FOIAs. So just be aware of that, that it could be done. Now, if it's done all through the web or through the town email address, which I believe everybody has now, then it makes it a lot easier to do that, and they don't have to come to you and to your personal accounts.
yeah.
So with that as a springboard, as we talked about, making sure that Naomi and the person who does the email accounts and everything is aware to take your personal accounts off of the distribution list and to start just using the town email addresses.
Okay.
Correct, and maybe you could seek a little guidance from the board. It was my understanding, part of what we were doing today in email, just asking, are we having a meeting? The agenda's not posted, is okay. What's not okay, if we said, can we all agree that the tennis courts can be used? 'Cause
Right.
that technically is a vote. So it was always my understanding, but maybe you could get
No, that's a
clarification.
much
We
better
could ask
clarification.
questions like, are we having a meeting? Did the agenda get posted? Those kinds of things, but we cannot say, hey, John Stark asked if they use the tennis courts, what do you guys all think?
Yeah,
That
okay.
we
Yeah.
can't do.
Makes sense.
Or basically, responding to and say, hey, maybe you should change this and do any kind of editing on anything like that. Anything of that kind of discussion should be happening in a meeting.
No,
Anything that.
no business,
Right,
basically.
right, no business, but talking about the business,
Right.
talking about the agenda, saying,
I
hey,
think we
you know,
can
this
request-
needs.
Please add this to the
Yeah,
agenda.
Add this to the
please.
agenda. If you're going to, the general rule of thumb is, use it to distribute information.
Yep.
Don't reply to that information.
So in other words, when we email in terms of, yes, these are the dates I can be here for our additional meeting, that will be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, that makes sense. Just wanted to clarify, that's all.
But I think we
That
have to
makes
be
sense.
very careful not to ask, what do you guys think, can we do this? And then all go yes, no, yes, no.
Of course, yes.
That becomes a vote.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but if you, just, again, just remember that anything written down can be requested, and they might say, please send all the emails in this, in this date that pertain to whatever.
And
Absolutely.
I think maybe what we could do also, that I find sometimes challenging on the email, is when we do the elections of the new officers, maybe we could clarify, when the public does email us, is there somebody who should be responding? Because I know that sometimes I'll wait 2 or 3 days, but if nobody's responding, then I'll say, we can add you to the agenda, or we'll add it to Tuesday night. But I would like to see the public get a response within 24 to 48 hours when they do email
Agreed.
us.
Yep.
And we may not be making a decision, but even if we just say, we'll take your question or your issue and put it on the agenda, and we'll get, our meeting is 2 weeks from now, and we'll get back to you. And I think my perspective from having been here for 3 years is we never did designate that. Our prior chair, not Pam, had always said, I'm here to run the meeting. We're all members of the commission, and that's great, but I do think sometimes emails sit there
Yeah.
Yeah.
for far too long.
And even if there's a designated person that, for any requests having to do with the tennis court, this person responds. For any requests
Right.
having to do with X, Y, or Z, this other person responds.
So Dave,
I think
maybe
that needs to be
if you could
clear.
add that
It could be one person
for
for
everything.
everything.
Yeah, there needs to be a
That There needs to
clarification.
be
Yes.
clarification.
Well, I
Yes.
think we
An
also need
agreement.
to do is have an automatic auto reply. So as soon as you email us, thank you for contacting where's Parks and Recs Commission, your email, this is not a monitored email address. Someone will respond to you within 24 to 48 hours.
It's fair.
Thank you.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Parks. So at least they know that it got to somewhere, and someone, at least it's got a reply out there. Unfortunately, that does start the clock, so it starts the clock, so the clock running, that somebody's gotta get back to.
Yeah.
No, I think
But then
that's
we
all
sit
part
down
of-
At the next meeting and go, okay, anything to do with this park,
we could-
you respond, or with these type of things that it's gone that way.
And we can say, except during extenuating circumstances such as outages. I mean,
Sure.
just
Yeah.
in case, you know.
And when you do respond, make sure you respond to the distribution list as well. That way, everybody will see the
Yes.
response.
Agreed.
And everybody knows that it's
Been
Oh, okay, somebody just took care of this.
resolved.
And
yeah.
it's been taken care of, and it's
Yeah.
done.
Well, I think
Yep.
that's what's gonna be helpful about the new email system, because in the past, people have all of our personal
Right.
emails. So sometimes they email Lisa,
Yep,
sometimes they email me, or maybe just Dave, and it gets out of the loop. I think with this new system, it's going to be easier. The mail comes into all of us. The other thing I'll throw in there too is that proof point essential, what's the spam that we're getting?
Oh, the quarantine digest?
Proof something.
Yes.
point?
Yeah. There again, if there's an email that gets captured, somebody has to let it out of there. And so, again, are we all assuming, oh, somebody else is looking at this? But could that become a designated responsibility of one of the
Yes.
officers that every day they check the spam and make sure they're releasing any email that is pertinent to the whole
I-
board.
I
Because
think
I,
That's-
what we have
I
to
think
do is,
that's important.
we have to have, obviously, we had to work on setting up the auto reply. And then we have like, hey, somebody's gonna answer all the questions on the park. Obviously, the tennis courts are kind of a separate thing that will kind of do that. And then we have to have somebody who's checking the spam filter.
Yeah.
So we got basically
Well,
3
well,
boxes.
I think you're all getting the same spam, because it comes in and then it's distributed to everybody.
we are, but unless,
But someone has to
somebody
be
re-
responsible for going through and saying, this one we need to let through, this one doesn't get let
So
through.
2 months
This- 'cause
ago,
you have
there
to-
was an
yeah.
email sitting in, that pertained to scheduling, that was sitting in the spam. We were all, I didn't even know what it was, nobody even instructed us what it was. It was Salem who said, you guys need to go in there, you got an email sitting there, and until somebody clicks on it, and it only takes one person, because we thought, well, if I click on it, I only see it, but it's, until one person clicks on it, it's going to sit in the spam folder and not be released.
I see.
So we may all be looking at the spam folder, but, and recently there hasn't been an email in there, but if there was, is there a designated person that just says, I'm gonna monitor this every day, and I'll release it, so then we all get to.
Yeah.
I think that,
And then we also have to figure out is, okay, what do we want to be releasing out of that spam? Because, you know, you're gonna start getting a whole bunch of solicitations.
Well, I don't think you wanna release anything that isn't personally,
Yeah, that is.
Well, no, hey, I have playground equipment I can sell
Yeah, I
you.
wouldn't
You know,
release that.
you start
No.
getting all of those type of people who
Yeah.
are gonna start pinging that address that's,
No.
you know,
but we had an applicant, I think we had an applicant sitting in there. It was either an applicant or request for field usage. You look at that and you know that that is legitimately, should be released. Of course. It was a town person asking us a question. So we, you know, again, those are the ones, if we had somebody assigned to monitoring
Well, I
it.
think that's,
Yeah,
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 that's
I-
something that will happen when we do.
when we do
it.
the officers, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed. So a lot of this is part of the organization and the bylaws and stuff that, you know, some of it we're picking up along the way, and I will throw it into the paperwork as we build it, and, you know,
Do you have a sense when you'll have a partial draft or a full draft for us? or-
I can get a basic draft that's just a modification off of what I have, just to get an idea of what we're looking at, that I can distribute by the next meeting if we got a week or two. I'll get that finished up together. I've been doing a lot of reading. I've just been doing a lot of reading and trying to like make notes, what should get thrown in, what should not get thrown in, what should be, you know, like we talked about policies for this, policies for that. Should that be in the bylaws or should that be a separate thing? So, got notes all over the place, and I'll present a lot of that to you at the next meeting.
Super.
If that's,
Because we
Good.
probably should get that on
Yeah.
as an agenda item.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a work in
And you'll
progress,
send
so.
us the draft ahead of time?
Yeah, I
so
can do
we
that.
can, like, actually have time to review
Yeah,
it.
sure.
but- Yeah, okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
So if we have nothing else, I'll make a motion that we adjourn at 9:05.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
And you
I'm
are,
Dave Lundin.
Yeah.
And I am Matthew Beeler.
All in favor?
hi, Denise Purington.
I, Matthew Beeler.
I, Shelby O'Donnell.
aye, everybody else. No, this is
And
Chair.
I mean, yeah, and I'm like, is that something we can even vote on?
Or do you want to shut off the system?
Let me just-
Good point.
Technically, I guess. Well, we do have a vice chair, so.
I didn't-
No, we do,
I don't
even
even-
on official meetings, we
Yeah,
do
you still have to
open and
close
close
it.
them,
Yeah.
so, yeah, yeah.
I guess
I didn't know if you guys had like done the Pledge of Allegiance and all
better-
that.
Oh, no, we did that, yeah, we did that.
I think we're better